I wonder if everything could ever feel this real forever. If anything could ever be this good again. The only thing I'll ever ask of you, you've got to promise not to stop when I say, when. The Foo Fighters are charging into theaters for their feature-length horror comedy, Studio 666. There's blood, guts, and guitars, so is it worth the watch? The Foo Fighters move into an Encino mansion steeped in grisly rock and roll history to record their much-anticipated 10th album. Alright, so this is pretty much what you'd expect from rock stars as leading actors in their own movie. The Foo Fighters have to record another album, but because it's their 10th, they want it to be different and epic. So to help capture a new sound and vibe, their manager finds them some old mansion in the hills. The house has a pretty jacked up history, which we then get to see in the opening shots of the film. So as a result, we'll now have an influence over the band members as they write and they record their tracks. In addition to the Foo Fighters, we have some seasoned comedic actors that make appearances in this. There's Jeff Garlin, Whitney Cummings, and Will Forte. Now, for their roles, they're good, but Garlin was a bit over the top with his character. I mean, he's almost forcing the lines out in some kind of weird yell. As I was watching this, I give it a certain amount of grace when it comes to the acting of the band. I mean, they're musicians acting, not actors playing musicians, and that distinction is very obvious when you watch. The line delivery is stiff at times, and conversations sometimes come across as them trying to remember what they were supposed to say in a situation. But again, you know what? I overlooked most of that because I didn't have high expectations for their acting abilities in the first place. The story is intriguing, but it does take a while to find its groove. And some portions also feel like they should have been rearranged to make the story more cohesive and easier to follow earlier on in the narrative. There's a portion where Whitney Cummings has a scene of story exposition, and when this arrives, it's already towards the latter portion of the film. I think this would have better served the story to be introduced earlier to clue us into certain nuances in that story that may not have been just completely obvious, but they're pretty integral to the plot. Now, there's also a pacing issue with this that has nothing to do with any of the acting. The story is repetitive because we watch Dave Grohl struggle to write a song, play some music, then he records portions with the band, has a tantrum about something, and then repeats the entire procedure again. This happens a few times, and we don't need to see all of it play out every single time because it didn't actually move the story forward. In fact, the story would stall at these points, making a film that's an hour and 45-ish minutes feel longer than that. Now, the effects that are used in this are really awesome to watch. I mean, there are a lot of practical effects in play, and only occasionally are any CGI effects introduced. Now, this makes for some awesome visuals, which are then pretty visceral and, I think, disgusting. And because this is a horror, it doesn't shy away from the violence. I mean, when there's a kill, it's showed with great brutality. And a couple of times I actually blurted out laughter because what was shown was so unexpected. There were some scenes, though, that were shown in the trailer, and I just wish they wouldn't have done that. I wish they would have saved them to be experienced only in the movie. Something that I found to be fun is the inclusion of all sorts of Easter eggs that are sprinkled throughout the movie. Now, some of them are cameos, other times it's nods to horror movies, or maybe even visuals that reference Foo Fighter albums. I mean, I'm sure I didn't catch all of them, but there were quite a few. Something I thought that was really awesome is that they got John Carpenter to help with the theme music, and it has some of his signature sounds in it, which then is just a whole nother layer of coolness. And speaking of music, I mean, there is a ton of great music contained within this movie, and not all of it comes from the Foo Fighters, but it is awesome to watch the band as they just jam together and work on songs. This movie could almost be seen as one large album launch music video, because, I mean, their album is dropping to be timed with the movie. Now, the catch is that the album is from Dream Widow, a doom metal band that's featured in the movie. It's really the Foo Fighters performing, but I think the movie tie-in is just so insanely cool, and it's fitting because the first single is called March of the Insane. Alright, that is enough about the music and album from a fictional band with an actual physical release. So overall, Studio 666 gives Foo Fighters fans a good dose of the band in some harrowing and ridiculous situations. I can overlook the subpar acting because these are musicians, not actors. I mean, they're effective for what's being told, but you don't look for anything awards-worthy coming from them. The music is wonderful, and the practical effects are outstandingly brutal and bloody, which creates a true horror atmosphere for the band to play with. While the pacing is a bit off and some sequences are ineffectively repetitive, the overall movie is a lot of fun. Now, if you're not a fan of Foo Fighters, I'm not sure this is worth seeing in the theaters, but it's definitely worth checking out on demand or when it comes to streaming platforms. There's sex, maybe some very brief nudity, a ton of profanity, and some very gory violence. I give Studio 666 3.5 out of 5 couches. All right, so who's a fan of Foo Fighters? What's your favorite album or song? Now, for me, I know it's probably cliche, but it's Long Road to Ruin. Let me know what yours is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.